You're watching NewsX. I'm Udar Pratap Singh. Our big focus on the broadcast in a significant milestone for the India-Iran relationship. India has signed a pact with Iran's Chabahar port for the next 10 years. The Indian company India Ports Global Limited and Ports and Maritime Organization of Iran signed the new 10-year contract under which Indian side will equip and operate the Chabahar port for the duration of the contract. Indian company India Ports Global Limited will invest approximately $102 million in Chabahar port. India has also offered an credit window equivalent to $250 million for mutually identified projects aimed at improving Chabahar-related infrastructure. Now, India has been developing a part of the port in Chabahar, located on Iran's southeastern coast along the Gulf of Oman, as a way to transport goods to Iran, Afghanistan, as well as Central Asian countries. The new deal with Iran will open up a trade route between South Asia and Central Asia via Iran, bypassing Karachi and Gwadar port in Pakistan. Joining us at this point is Mukesh Sachdev, former ambassador. We also have Pathikrit Pain, international affairs expert, joining us live. Dr. Monica Verma, international expert, is also live with us. Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, is joining us live. Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist, is also with us this hour. Let me make a start with you, Ambassador Sachdev. How big a development is this for India-Iran relationship and also for our strategic interests there?
I think it's very significant, and it has, despite plenty of uncertainty in the region, it has evident potential. When I say uncertainty, I should quantify it. First of all, the area in which it is located, Sistan, Baluchistan province of Iran, is restive. It's a Sunni majority province in a Shia majority country, and if you recall, in January there were attacks by Jaish al-Adl, a Sunni group against Iranian Revolutionary Guards, and in retaliation, Iran had launched rockets on the Pakistani side of the border, where Jaish al-Adl's camps were allegedly located. Pakistan had retaliated and bombed Iranian side. So that's one part. Second part is Afghanistan's situation remains unclear. When the Chabahar project between India, Afghanistan and Iran was initially mooted, Taliban were in opposition, but it was an American-supported Afghan government that we wanted to help at that point, and we were giving over $1 billion in assistance to that country's government. Now the situation has changed, and Talibans are in power, but then within 3 years of taking power, Pakistan's relations with the Taliban have deteriorated. And Taliban now looks at India in a different manner than Taliban, where hijacked Indian Airlines plane landed, and rest is history in '99. So that is another difference. Thirdly, the United States has imposed drastic sanctions on Iran. Iran has been at the cusp of an opposition to the order that Israel and United States want to have in the Middle East, and its proxies such as Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthis are opposing Israel in their own ways in Gaza, in Lebanon, and in Yemen and Red Sea. That last point brings us back to Chabahar port. Red Sea being a sea of uncertainty, as Houthis are bombing and sending drones over commercial shipping. The India's vital artery to west by the sea has been disrupted. And that could be one more motivation for us to have speeded up Chabahar port, which which goes away from this area and avoids Bab el Mandeb and Strait of Hormuz both to connect with Central Asia and through international north-south transport corridor to Europe, including Russia. So all those things are important manifestations, but how does this project pan out would depend on all these imponderables. Thank you, Uday.
Pathakrit Pine, come in here on the strategic importance of this pact and what India hopes to gain from this development that, of course, now has finally come through.
Uday, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, let me tell you, the larger perspective of having this, this port is not just for the heck of it. This is, as Ambassador Sachdev rightly mentioned, in terms of gradual operationalization of the international north-south transport corridor, the relevance of it is this. We import a significant portion of our edible oil fertilizers apart from, fuel from Russia. Now, if you look at the route through which it comes, mostly it comes via North Sea, Mediterranean Sea, then through the Gulf of Aden, it reaches India, which is a very, very long route. Now, if this part is operationalized, which will be a multimodal, transport network connecting through rail, road, and sea lanes, it will reduce time and cost by almost 30 to 40%. And if you look at it, the entire spectrum or ecosystem, which probably India is working on, developing are the countries from Russia to Iran to many of the Central Asian countries. Most of these countries are pretty comfortable to have a rupee ruble or, our transactions in the rupee currency. So I think this is almost like a replica of the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor that has been, that is also in the pipeline, but has been stuck for a few reasons. Now, I think, the larger reason why India is trying to do this is because, as mentioned earlier, the Gulf of Aden crisis, of course, part of it for which Iran is also responsible. But I think the larger game is this: if you eventually have to have peace in Middle East, you cannot have peace till the time this Western obsession to create a pariah state of Iran continues. If Iran continues to be, sanctioned and is not allowed at all to transact or prosper by selling its energy resources, it will absolutely do whatever it is doing right now in terms of ensuring that if it cannot prosper, it will not allow anyone else to prosper. So whether the Houthis or the Hamas or the Hezbollah, these are all proxies created by Iran to ensure that no one else can peacefully do business. So I think this INSTC corridor is a great, opportunity and a prospective proposition in terms of not only enhancing, the spectrum of India's rupee-related denomination transactions, but also India's access to Central Asia. Let me tell you, this Chabahar port eventually will be connected to a Chabahar-Zaidan railroad and a Dilaram Zaranj, road, both of which India is investing upon. So invariably, it will give access to Central Asia, and it will keep an eye on the Chinese activities. Now, I am not saying that any kind of investment in Chabahar or INSTC will reduce Iranian dependence on China. We have to dehyphenate that. But one of the key reasons why there is a disproportionately high level of dependence that Iran has today on China as part of the $400 billion 25-year program that they have with China today is because nobody else is willing to invest in the sanctioned economy of Iran. And that is why the Chinese are investing into their petroleum manufacturing infrastructure sector and taking almost $250 to $290 billion of discounted oil. So I think in terms of hedging the Chinese influence, in terms of keeping an eye on China's activity in Gwadar, and in terms of ensuring that this larger bloc is created, which is distinct from the West, from Russia to India, with all the Central Asian countries in between. I think it's a great proposition that the Americans are concerned not because of Chabahar, because Chabahar was exempted from the CAATSA sanctions from 2017-18 onwards. Their fear is that eventually India is trying to materialize the INSTC, which will be a de-dollarized environment perhaps. So this is their concern. But I think the American obsession with sanctions and threats of sanctions is gradually becoming, it is losing its traction. It is becoming something with diminishing marginal utility. I think the Americans must stop it and should appreciate that here is a country called India, which while keeping good relation with the West, which while keeping good relation with the Arab Sunni world and Israel, is also trying to ensure and do something which will reduce the tension in the Middle East, because unless you make Iran a critical part of the prosperity metrics, they will not allow anyone else to do it. And certainly this whole concept of sanctioning countries is not helping. Let me tell you my last point, Uday. If the American sanctions on Iran and Russia goes up, then the price of oil in the global market will come down by $40 a barrel. So the obsession to create sanctions and artificially inflate this entire price of energy has to go. And also, if Iran has to come out of its obsession with destruction of Israel, which is one of the reasons why all these sanctions continue, then somebody has to talk to them from the perspective or a mentality of a friend and an ally. The country which can do it today is India, and I think India is doing something which the West should support instead of giving threats of sanctions, because these threats in the past did not work and it will not work in future either. Back to you then.
Right. Dr. Monica Verma, come in here on, on this move, of course. It's going to be India's first overseas port now. What all do we hope to gain from this development and from the operationalization of it?
Thank you. First of all, it is correct, helping India correct a great strategic loss which was caused to India due to partition. In 1947, when the partition happened, India lost a lot of territory to Pakistan. And since that day till today, Pakistan has always played a very difficult game with India. It has never allowed India to get an easy transit to Afghanistan. It's a smaller economy than India, much smaller economy than India. It was always scared of India hegemonizing it, India's economy overtaking Pakistan economy, Indian products reaching Afghanistan, and that may be undermining Pakistan's influence. And even, the military in Pakistan has a great stake in their economy. It is a very commercial actor, so to say, unlike India, where civilians and military are two different aspects. Pakistani society is very different. Military has the veto on the commercial decisions. So, for a long time, Pakistan has never allowed India any transit to Afghanistan, and due to partition, again, India had lost its access to Central Asia. So for the whole Cold War time, we were dependent on Soviet Union, and Soviet Union was a great friend. Today, Russia is a great friend. So that aspect was always taken care of. Our interest in Central Asia, we may not be as active in terms of trade, and China was lucky to have that direct access to Central Asia, which India was not because of geographical constraints. So due to that, today also in Central Asia, what we see is that China is very dominant. And that dominant Chinese presence is not only irritating India, it has also been an irritant for the Russians as well. And maybe this is why they are inviting India to join organizations like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now, this Chabahar port deal is an old one, and there have been many developments taking place in the last 10 years or so. But what is important, how this, the agreement that has been signed recently is a game changer, is because till now we only had an ad hoc access to the Chabahar port. So the arrangement was very ad hoc in nature, and there was no security, there was no sense of, permanence that the business world requires, that the industry leaders require. Because see, ultimately we are talking about ports, and ports are utilized by the industry leaders. They have to move their entire supply chain. While they are investing, while they are, changing their entire supply chain, they have to see how credible it is. It's not going to cost them much, how cost effective it is, how time effective is it. And all these are different, permutations and combinations that they look at. So I think due to the lack of this arrangement, due to the lack of a 10-year or a 20-year or something, a very, very long-term arrangement, they were always they were always very apprehensive about investing in the Chabahar port. But now that this agreement has been secured by India, I'm sure it will give a lot of confidence, especially to the industry, that India is backing this project, and Iran has also agreed to giving India access for 10 years to this project. And so it's wise and it's a smart business move to be using this port. Also, it's not only limited to Iran and Afghanistan and further to Central Asia. This can prove to be an alternative to the Suez Canal route because, further it goes to the Caspian Sea and from there onwards all the way to Russia, St. Petersburg. And we can actually get an alternative port to the European region. So I think it's a fantastic move because, India currently is a growing economy, whether it is energy or our own manufacturing, industry. We are focusing so much on Make in India and the kind of free trade agreements also that this government is signing. There is a lot of emphasis on not just being a customer but also being a supplier of products. So I think this is opening up a whole gamut of connectivity. It is opening up a whole gamut of trade relations. The area, the geography which was constrained to us so far is now finally available. So I think it's a fantastic move for India, and I think as an Indian I can't be more proud of it.
Yes, let me in fact quickly take that across to Madhav Nalapath as well. Professor Nalapath, obviously a lot of back and forth has gone into the inking of this agreement. Obviously this is something now that will effectively counter Gwadar as well as CPEC, isn't it?
You're quite right, Uday, and I think what I can do is to add on to the arguments of the other panelists. Each of them has given some very cogent arguments. The fact of the matter is that Iran is a fact of life. The current regime in Iran is a fact of life. You cannot run away from that. And frankly, regime change operations attempted by the United States and its Western allies, more often than not, they've ended in disaster. India is very wisely keeps itself aloof from any such regime change operation and works with the regime in power. As far as Iran is concerned, I think it's important to have a good relationship with Iran, and the Chabahar port is a very important reason for that. For a simple reason, as has correctly been said, it provides an alternative access to Central Asia and thereafter beyond that to Europe and to Russia. Now, as far as India is concerned, initially when there were some issues regarding purchase of Iranian oil, we did not have alternative payment systems in place. As a consequence, we had to stop buying Iranian oil for some time, and that created some fissures in the relationship with Iran. Today, with the Russians, we are buying a huge amount of oil, and we have worked out a payment structure, a structure in which the rupee is figuring prominently. So again, from that point of view, we are in a much better position to withstand sanctions than we were in the past. There's no question that this kind of a project is in the Indian interest. It's also in the Iranian interest. I don't think Iran would like to be too dependent on China. They know very well that as far as the Chinese are concerned, that they are looking only for themselves and not for any other country. And from that point of view, if they need to put Iran under the bus, they will do so. It's important for them to have India as also one of their options. And I think from that point of view, they have inked this agreement. It's a good agreement. It's a good start. And a lot of work has already gone into building this corridor, and hopefully the benefits will come. I quite agree that this corridor is a very important corridor. It's an alternative to several other corridors. And in a world in which you've got so much of uncertainty, it's always better to have alternatives. It's always better to build redundancies. So if one route is blocked, another route is open. And I think that is what the Indian planners are doing when they ink this agreement with Iran. And I think where Iran is concerned, it's important to have geopolitically as many options as possible. And that's why on the Iranian side, they've gone ahead with this. Uday.
Yes. Gautam Mukherjee, come in here on, on of course, this development, what it means for where India-Iran relations stand currently, and what you hope now this port will be strategically used for.
We've been at Chabahar, as many of the other panelists have pointed out, for quite a while. That we have made bold to sign a 10-year agreement is excellent, because this is the one route all the way from Russia to India and beyond in which the West probably has the least influence. We gain access not only to Iran, but to Central Asia and on to Russia. We have good relationship with Russia. We've essentially had a good relationship with Iran, and there is no reason for India that is increasingly thinking for itself or instead of in blocks, for it to not be enthusiastic about this 10-year contract. It, as others have pointed out, it reduces the influence of the bottleneck at the Straits of Hormuz. It reduces the effectiveness of Gwadar port, which is in Chinese hands, and it does nothing to take away from the other corridor with the UAE, Saudi, Israeli, Greek participation, which has been mired largely because of this war in Gaza and could well revive. And it will provide some competitive advantages because if you've got Chabahar already going and working in rubles and rupees and Central Asian currencies and Iranian rials, I think, then it is also likely that the other corridor will also try and deal with local currencies in the course of its trade and not rely entirely on dollars. You see, for India, it's crucial. We've crept up from 80 to nearly 90% of a bigger volume of petroleum which is imported. Now, if 90% of our petroleum is imported and petroleum and gas, and if it's a vast amount being done in dollars against which we have been suffering steadily, we are now practically at 85 of the dollar. It is imperative that we work out different arrangements, and this applies to a number of other countries. Recently, Gazprom, also the curious piece of news, has doubled the quantity of gas it sells to China, but has made a loss for the first time because it's no longer selling at preferable prices to Europe. It is forced pretty much to sell discounted gas to China and is, even at much larger volumes, making a loss. So Iran, in turn, is also selling to China pretty much with its hands tied at very, disadvantageous prices, if you like. They also send it to Pakistan and sell on from there. With all this, these are, desperate measures taken because of sanctions. India provides if you like, some leverage and relief to the Iranians as well. There is no reason why, beyond the point, India should get overly involved in Western concerns with regard to West Asia and the Middle East. We have our own, and we should attend to it, and that is what this deal represents. I think it is churlish of America to threaten India with sanctions. Well, it threatens the whole world with sanctions. On the one hand, they want to be in Quad. On the other hand, they want to threaten us. They did threaten us when we started buying Russian oil, but they never saw it through. They threatened us when we bought the S-400, missile cover from Russia. And again, they didn't follow through. Possibly they won't follow through because India is too much in their strategic calculations when it comes to the South China Sea, the East China Sea, China in general. And China, ironically, has become the largest exporter to India after, it's overtaken the United States. So in a way, we can't do without China. China makes the world's goods. We're pushing EV, every battery comes from China. We're making steel, we need it from China. We're making 100 other things. Electronics, our exports are pushing 900 billion, it is true. How much of the componentry is from China and will remain something that comes from China till we are able to do even a fraction or a quarter or a half of what we have to currently import. So it's a working relationship that can't be avoided. It is very sad that we have such tensions on the border, which will continue because, again, it is a geostrategic imperative as far as China goes to keep India under pressure. So we will have to, fight that battle separately, the economic battle separately. We've often said rhetorically that, how can you have business as usual when you're threatening us across the border?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to have to leave it at that. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.